Hello and welcome to this quick tutorial on color correction and color grading in Adobe Premiere Pro. Okay, so first off, let's talk a little bit about the differences between color correction and color grading because they are different things. So color correction is when we're fixing technical problems with our footage, so issues that we might have had while filming. That might be the white balance is off in certain shots or the exposure's off, either it's under or overexposed. Color correction is the process of going in, looking at our brushes in Premiere and trying to fix those technical problems. Whereas color grading is the artistic process that we use to stylize the look of our film. So thinking about how we can add to our mood, our tone, or how we can create a particular aesthetic with our footage. So very much looking at it from a completely artistic perspective. So first of all, let's start by having a look at how we can color correct some of our footage. So I've got this footage open in my timeline here. So I'm in the assembly edit at the moment. So I've got some footage in a timeline. It's filmed flat at the moment, as we can see. And the final clip, the white balance is a little bit off in it. So I'm going to color correct this now. So the first thing I need to do is go to color. Now, the layout of my version of Adobe Premiere Pro might be different from yours if you're in the most recent version. If it is, then all the tabs have simply moved to the upper right-hand corner where my mouse cursor is. So click over here and you should see all your tabs. So select color for me. And then what you're going to want is you're going to want your luminetry scopes open on the left-hand side. I've got mine set to RGB Parade and Luma at the moment. Okay, so in my color tab, then we can see I've got my scopes on the left-hand side that tell me important data to do with my footage. I've got my program window here that can show me what's on the timeline. And I've got my sequence down here in my bin on the left-hand side. And on the right here, I've got the luminetry color tab, okay, which is full of all the important things that we need. So first off, let's color correct this footage. So this was filmed in flat, as I hope your footage is filmed in flat or log. So as we can see here, the image looks quite grey and washed out at the moment. So if I look at my scopes here, the luminance scope here on the right-hand side, this is telling me important information about how light or dark my image is. We can see readings going from 0 up to 100 here, okay, in 10 increments of 10. 0 is where my image is underexposed, and 100 is where my image would be overexposed. So this is basically looking at the dynamic range of the brightness of my image. So at the moment, I can see that my image is between 10 and 60. So it's quite compressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into basic correction here. And there's two different ways that I could work with my flat footage here. I could stretch out the footage to include more of the shadows and highlights. So I'm going to do this. The first way is I'm going to drag down my shadows here. And as we drag down the shadows and the blacks, we see that the vector scope here, the luminance, starts to move down. So the color data moves down. Then I'm going to drag up my highlights and I'm going to bring my whites up as well. Okay, and now if we go back, I'll add a bit more to my shadows now, stretch it down, being careful not to hit 0 or 100. But what I've done here essentially is I've taken my flat footage here and I've kind of stretched out the difference between lightness and darkness. So I've added more contrast essentially. If I tick the FX tab up here, we can see the difference already that we've made in converting our flat footage and color correction to add more of a kind of, see more of the dynamic range there, okay? I'm just going to very, very quickly undo that. So that's the first way that we could stretch out our flat footage, is using the tone tab on basic correction. The other way is by going into the curves. So I'm going to go into my curves tab here, RGB Curves, and I'm going to add what's called an S curve here. So to do that, I've got a straight line here, which is kind of telling me about the color data picture. I'm clicking to add a point at the bottom and pulling it down, and you'll see that it stretches out the RGB curve there. I'm going to add another point at the top and pull it above the blue line. So I'm making what looks like the letter S here, if you can see. Okay, now this is adding more contrast to my image. Now what I'm going to do is go into my basic correction. I'm going to move the exposure up a little bit, being very careful not to hit 100 on my Luma scope over here. So I've achieved the same thing there, basically. I've taken my flat footage there in color correction. I've stretched it out so that we can see there's more contrast in the light and dark part of the images, and it doesn't look as washed out or grey anymore. Okay, so we can see what a difference that's made already. Okay, the next thing that we can do in colour correction, okay, is to fix any white balance issues. So if your footage was filmed and you didn't set the white balance properly when you're out filming, for example here it's a bit washed out and blue, then we can use the white balance selector to change our white balance. So to do that, I'm going to go into my basic correction. Underneath here you should see a tab that says white balance. I'm going to use my white balance selector pipette tool here and basically click on something that's white in the image. There we go, I've clicked it, and it's now fixed my image to fix the white balance. So if you've been out filming and you've forgotten to white balance on some of your shots when you've changed locations or moved to an area with different lighting, that is something that we can fix in Premiere as part of our colour correction. So some very basic stuff there to do with kind of stretching out our footage, fixing white balance issues, and obviously the same, we can move the exposure down, we can increase the contrast using the basic correction tools, so our colour correction tools here. Okay, so first of all, we get our footage, our rushes in good shape and make sure we've fixed any of those technical issues that we've had while filming. The next part then is doing the actual grading. So colour grading then, if we remember, this is the artistic part of the process where we're going to stylize the look of our film to add mood, tone, or to create that particular aesthetic look that we want. Okay, there's two ways that we can color grade within Premiere Pro. Okay, we can either use Luts or we can do it manually. So what are Luts then? Luts are lookup tables. They're a tool that allows us to apply a preset color profile to our images very, very quickly and easily. Think of it as like a template that you're going to apply to your footage that's going to change the image. Okay, so the benefits of using Luts is that they're really quick and easy to apply, and there's a wealth of them that are available online for free. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, I've got a load of Luts that I'm going to share with the class on Aula, so feel free to download them. Okay, we'll add them to your Premiere Pro. Okay, so let's have a look then at Luts then. So first of all, I'm going to drag, let's have this piece of footage here on the timeline. I'm going to close down my basic correction tab. So I want to go into the creative tab under luminetry color. And underneath here, I've got all the Luts that I've got installed on Premiere Pro. So we can see here, I've got a long list of Luts. So each of these is a different LUT that I've installed in Premiere Pro. Okay. What I can do is with the timeline over my image here, I can use the back and forward arrow to cycle through the different LUTs to find the aesthetic of the look that I want. So for this one, let's find something. Here we go. So let's just go for find something that's a little bit blue. There we go, natural boost, we'll go for that. When we found the look that we want, we can just click on the thumbnail image here and it will apply it to the clip on the timeline that we've got selected. So I've now applied this look to this clip here. I can change the intensity of the look by dragging the slider. So if I take it all the way down, we'll see it takes the look off. So we can add it on in gradients all the way up to 200, which is double the effect. Luts are a very quick and easy and powerful way for you to add a specific aesthetic look to your film footage. And if we want to add a look to Premiere, it's really easy. All we need to do is go to the Creative tab, and where it says Look, we click Browse. Browse to wherever you've saved your Luts on your hard drive. So I've downloaded a few to my downloads folder. So I've got a LUT pack here called FG3 Cine Luts Pack V2. Find the LUT that you want and then click Open. It will then bring it up in there and apply it to your clip that you've got selected. So let's just try that here. So browse. Let's go teal orange over here and click Open. And there we go. It's applied it now to my clip. Okay, so the other way to color grade your footage is to grade it manually. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my original sequence where I've got some clips on the timeline. So this has been color corrected, this clip, and now I'm going to grade it. So I'm going to change the stylized look of this shot to change the mood, the tone, and to create a particular aesthetic feel. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start by looking in the Creative tab. There's a couple of sliders in here that are quite useful. So vibrance and saturation, okay, both to do with the intensity of the colours in your shot. Okay, so saturation increases the intensity of all colours. So if I take my saturation slider and drag it across, you'll see all the colours become more intense, so kind of more lively. If I drag the slider down, we can see it loses a little bit of the colour from the shot, all the way to black and white. Okay, so it's to do with the colour data, the intensity of colour data in that shot. And the intensity works across highlights, midtones, and shadows. Whereas the vibrance also is to do with the intensity of the colours, but it only works on midtones. So it kind of brings out the dullest parts of your pictures. So I'm going to take the vibrance up, and you see it brings out the intensity of some of the colours, but not all of them. So not our kind of highlights. Okay, so vibrance and saturation are both very useful for grading. It might be that if you want to create a more somber, grim kind of look, you'll take your vibrance and your saturation down to make it a little bit duller. Likewise, if you want to create a more lively image, you might take your saturation up to bring out those colours. Another thing we can have a look at is the colour wheels. So if we go to colour wheels, this is to do with the cast and the hue of our image. And we can change within here. We've got 3 wheels, one for the highlights, or one for the colour of our highlights, one for the colour cast of our midtones, and another for the colour cast of our shadows. So the highlights then, if I hover my mouse over it, we'll see a little bullseye kind of aiming icon appears over it. I can use this to change the colour of my highlights in the shot. So if I drag it around, we'll see, change my highlights to be more warm and red. Or I can drag it down to create them, make it more blue. I can make it more green. For this one, what I'm going to do is I want to create a colder look in this scene. So I want the scene to look a little bit colder. So I'm going to drag it towards the blue tones, my highlights. The midtones, again, I want my midtones to be a bit blue and cold, so I'm going to drag them slightly down. And the shadows, I'm going to take them towards a more richer blue. Okay, so we can see here, if I toggle on and off, we can see I've made my image more blue. Now I have lost some of the colour in the face there, so I'm going to drag my highlights tone a little bit more towards the centre to regain that a little bit. Another thing we can do is I'm going to use the slider next to the shadows to bring the exposure down in my shadows. Likewise in my midtones, I'm going to make it a little bit darker there. And I'm going to bring up the intensity of my highlights a little. So we can see now, there's my original versus where we are. It's a bluer image, so it's colder and cooler in the colour cast. It could still be cooler though, so I'm going to bring my midtones down a little bit more. And this is quite a well-lit scene, so the highlights really are well lit, so the colour data are there. Okay, fantastic. Now I'm going to go back into my basic correction, and I'm going to play with some of the tabs in here. What I really want to do is bring down a bit more of kind of the shadows. I'm going to bring my exposure down, but then I'm going to bring my highlights and my whites up a little bit, just to create that little bit of contrast there. There we go, that's looking better. And I could even use the temperature selector here to make my image a little bit cooler. But by doing that, I'm losing a little bit of the tone on the face. So I'm going to keep that where it is. Wonderful. Let's have a little play with the vibrance then, just to take the vibrance down on those midtones. So once I've got kind of my shot looking as I want it to look, so if I turn my tab off, we can see there's the original ungraded and uncorrected footage. Now this is much more what I had in mind. So what I want to do now is I want to actually save this as a lookup table, a LUT that I could then apply to all of my other footage. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the 3 little lines icon next to luminatory color in the tab, and I'm going to export this as a .cube file. So I'm going to call this Ian Cool Blue. And I'm going to save this in a folder in my downloads, in a previous LUTs folder I've got saved. So I'm going to click save there. Now, say I get to another piece of footage over here. and I want to apply the same look then to this footage, what I can do now is go into my basic correction, and under the input LUT here, I can go browse, navigate to where you've saved it on your hard drive. So I've saved this, here we go, it's in the downloads, and there's Ian Cool Blue, which we just saved, and I'm going to click open. There we go, and we can see there now I've applied my LUT to this. Now, every time you apply a LUT to a different shot, you're going to need to tweak it a little bit. So don't just kind of throw it on and then leave it. So we can see in this one here, I kind of feel like it's lost a little bit of the skin tone there. So I'm going to go into my creative now and take the intensity down a little bit on that. And I'm just going to warm up a little bit the skin tone there. There we go. There we go. So we've made a LUT. So we've graded our footage. We're happy with it. And we've created a .cube file. So we've created our own LUT. We've saved it. And then using the input LUT, then we've brought it back and applied it to this footage here. Again, exactly the same thing. It's very, very quick and easy to do. So I hope that gives you a good starting point for grading your footage. As you're working today, I'm going to come around and have a little look at your footage and answer any questions that you've got. Hopefully, you can now start to begin to work through grading and colour correcting your films.